Good morning. This pre-class video is the introduction to our lecture on heuristics and schemas. By now, you should have already read and possess a thorough understanding of Chapter 3 of your Myers and Twenge textbook. And if you have not yet done so, I encourage you to do so before continuing with this video, as this is intended to solidify the content you've already studied. The concepts of heuristics and schemas are foundational in social psychology and help explain how we think, make decisions, and navigate a world filled with complexity. This pre-class video will be something to ground you before we explore specific examples and applications together in class on Thursday. Let's dive in. Over the past few weeks, we've discussed various ways the mind simplifies the overwhelming amount of information it encounters daily. Today, we're expanding on two of the most critical tools your brain uses, schemas and heuristics. These are not just theoretical concepts. They are practical, real-world processes that shape everything from your judgments about people to the decisions you make at the grocery store. Let's start with schemas. A schema is a mental framework, a kind of template your mind uses to interpret and organize information. You've been building schemas since you were a child, and they are deeply influenced by your experiences and the culture you live in. Imagine, for a moment, that you're walking into a classroom. You immediately have an idea of what to expect. There will likely be chairs, desks, and a teacher at the front of the room. That expectation is based on a schema for classrooms, a mental representation of what classrooms generally look like and how they function. Schemas are incredibly helpful. They save you from having to process every piece of information about a situation from scratch. Instead, they provide a shortcut, allowing you to focus on the unique aspects of what's happening. Beyond classrooms, you also have schemas for people, roles, and events. You have person schemas, which help you form expectations about individuals based on traits or behaviors. For instance, you might expect someone who is extroverted to enjoy social gatherings and dislike solitude. Role schemas guide your understanding of how people in specific positions are supposed to act. Think about the role of a doctor. You likely expect professionalism, medical expertise, and maybe even a reassuring bedside manner. Then, there are event schemas, often called scripts. These are schemas that help you predict how situations typically unfold. Take the example of going to a restaurant. You likely expect to wait for a server to greet you, place an order, eat your meal, and then pay the bill. Without such a script, navigating everyday life would feel overwhelming and unpredictable. However, schemas are not perfect. They can lead to biases and errors in judgment. A rigid schema can result in stereotypes, where broad generalizations about a group overshadow the individuality of its members. For example, a schema about teenagers might lead someone to unfairly assume that all teenagers are rebellious or impulsive. Confirmation bias is another potential pitfall. When people rely on their schemas, they may pay attention only to information that supports their pre-existing beliefs while ignoring evidence to the contrary. Overgeneralization can also occur when schemas are applied too broadly, causing unique details to be overlooked in favor of familiar patterns. Now let's turn our attention to heuristics, which are mental shortcuts used for decision-making and problem-solving. If schemas are your brain's guidebook for understanding the world, heuristics are the quick calculations that help you decide what to do next. They are especially useful in situations where you need to make decisions quickly or when you have incomplete information. One of the most common heuristics is the availability heuristic. This shortcut involves judging the likelihood of an event based on how easily examples of it come to mind. Imagine hearing about a plane crash on the news. Even though flying is statistically much safer than driving, that vivid story might make you feel that flying is more dangerous than it really is. The availability heuristic takes what is most accessible in your memory and uses it to influence your perception, often leading to errors. The representativeness heuristic is another mental shortcut. This one involves judging the probability of something based on how similar it is to a prototype or stereotype. For example, if you meet someone who is quiet and loves books, you might assume they are a librarian because they fit the prototype you have for that profession, even though other possibilities might be more likely. Anchoring and adjustment is yet another heuristic. This occurs when you rely heavily on an initial piece of information or an anchor when making a decision and adjust only slightly from it. For instance, if a car is priced at $30,000 and the salesperson offers to reduce it to $25,000, the initial price serves as an anchor. Even though the adjusted price might still be too high, it feels like a deal compared to the anchor. Finally, there's the affect heuristic, which highlights the role of emotions in decision-making. This occurs when your emotional response to a situation influences your judgment. For example, if you feel a strong sense of trust toward a smiling, friendly salesperson, you might be more inclined to buy from them without carefully analyzing the product or deal they are offering. While heuristics are invaluable for navigating the world efficiently, they can also lead to systematic errors or biases. They simplify complex decisions, but in doing so, they may steer you in the wrong direction, especially in situations that require careful thought and analysis. Understanding heuristics and schemas is about more than just learning terminology. It is about gaining insight into how your mind works and recognizing the shortcuts it takes. This awareness can help you identify when these mental tools are serving you well and when they might be leading you astray. It can also help you understand and empathize with others, recognizing that their judgments and decisions are shaped by their own schemas and heuristics, just as yours are. As we move into the next part of class, we'll examine specific examples of how these concepts play out in real-world scenarios, including their influence on social interactions, judgments, and decision-making processes. For now, reflect on how schemas and heuristics might already be shaping your thoughts and actions, often without you realizing it. By understanding these mental processes, you're not just learning about social psychology. You're gaining tools to think more critically, act more intentionally, and approach the world with greater awareness and empathy. That is the true power of studying the mind. This completes our pre-class video lecture on the introduction to schemas and heuristics. This week, we will take these concepts and bring them to life through detailed exploration and interactive discussion. Expect to engage with real-world scenarios where these mental shortcuts and frameworks shape our judgments and decisions. We'll analyze case studies, dissect famous psychological experiments, and consider how heuristics and schemas play out in everyday social interactions. You'll not only deepen your understanding of the theories, but also develop the ability to recognize these processes in action, both in yourself and in others. Throughout the week, we'll dive deeper into specific aspects of these topics. For instance, we'll examine how schemas influence implicit biases and stereotyping, and we'll discuss strategies for breaking free from rigid or harmful frameworks. We'll also explore heuristics in greater depth, using group activities to identify how these shortcuts can lead to cognitive biases and decision-making errors. By the end of the week, you should feel confident in your ability to connect these theoretical concepts to practical applications, enhancing both your academic understanding and your real-world awareness. Be prepared for a lively and thought-provoking series of classes that will challenge and expand your perspective. Thank you, students. And be sure to update your self-awareness and realization journals before Thursday's class. See you soon.